Israel and Lebanon have signed an historic deal. It's not a final deal, it's a framework deal that puts these two countries, Israel and Lebanon, on the road to peace. Could that really happen? We have not seen this type of peace, or even the prospect of peace between Israel and Lebanon, a formal peace, a written peace, an Abraham Accords type peace. It hasn't even been possible. I think you'd have to go back to the biblical times of King Hiram, the king of Lebanon in biblical times, making a deal first with King David of Israel and then King Solomon. Those were amazing deals, and I've talked to you about that before. But let's get into this specific framework and why it's so important. What do you need to know about it? Hi, this is Joel Rosenberg in Jerusalem with a YouTube exclusive for the Rosenberg Report. Joining me is Dr. Diker. He's a foreign policy expert, highly trusted here in Israel, and he's president of the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. Dr. Diker, thank you for joining me. What's your take on this? Because in the midst of an Iran deal that I'm worried about, and that most Israelis are worried about, and that we've seen a 43-point drop in Israelis' approval of President Trump on Iran, because Israelis feel shocked and confused. That's happening on the Iran front. But the Lebanon front is connected to what's going on in Iran. So what's your take? And should we be optimistic? I am optimistic about this, but it shows what a complex environment we're operating in right now.
Absolutely, Joel. The reason for optimism here in this first time since 1983 that the government of Lebanon has actually signed a framework agreement. 83 was actually a full peace agreement that was signed but never implemented.
This was after the 1982 invasion of Lebanon, Operation Peace for Galilee, when that time it wasn't Hezbollah. They didn't really...
Syria was the killjoy.
Syria and then the PLO under Yasser Arafat was attacking Israel constantly, and Menachem Begin was the prime minister then, a Likud prime minister, and decided enough is enough and sent Ariel Sharon in. It got messy, but there was this negotiated deal, but it wasn't really consummated.
It was not consummated, and here you have a second attempt at an MOU at a critical moment where the Iranian octopus has tentacles throughout the Middle East, the crown jewel, if you will, of the Iranian terror proxy network is Hezbollah in Lebanon. And here, frontally... Which
is much larger, much more dangerous, much more lethal than Hamas, as bad as it was.
100%.
More than the Houthis, as bad as they are.
Absolutely, 100%. The Hezbollah is a proper army with terror capabilities, not only throughout the Middle East, throughout Latin America, America's back door. They've got all kinds of illicit businesses. They've got terror capabilities throughout Latin America, which is, by the way, why it was so important that President Trump took Maduro out of that narco-terrorism center, because he was the headquarters for the IRGC in Latin America. Back to Lebanon. The reason that the deal is, the deal in the making, if you will, is so important is that it basically puts a major stick in the wheels of the Iranian terror network internationally and essentially clips the crown jewel of Iranian regime terror, the Hezbollah, separates it from the Iranian regime in a perceptual sense across the Middle East, and also allows Israel to do whatever it needs to do in Lebanon to assert defensible borders. Now that
this is important because the Iran deal, MOU, 14 points, basically linked in a way that Israelis were horrified by, and many Americans were too, those who were paying attention, that it felt like Israel did not have freedom of movement, of operational capacity to attack Hezbollah when it was threatened. It seemed like Iran was putting a veto on Israeli freedom of movement against Hezbollah, Iran working to try to protect its crown jewel in the region, its forward operating base right on Israel's northern border.
Correct.
But just days later, this 14-point MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, is signed with a Lebanese ambassador, with the Israeli ambassador, and with Secretary of State Rubio helping to orchestrate and navigate it. So you've got a Vance deal with Iran, you've got a Rubio deal between Lebanon and Israel, and this deal with Lebanon and Israel does seem to give Israel American freedom and Lebanese encouragement and support to destroy Hezbollah when needed and as needed. Is that a fair way to?
It's a very fair way of saying it. It also is it also basically is a Lebanese government blessing to allow the Israel Defense Forces, which is the only military force in the entire Middle East that has really taken on the Hezbollah, to continue to degrade the Hezbollah fighting force, because many people in the West don't know that 60% of the Lebanese security forces are Shiite, the same sect of Islam that the Hezbollah represents, a very radical version of Shiism, but there are a lot of family connections between the 60% of the Lebanese security forces Shiite population and the Hezbollah. So that really compromises the Lebanese security force's ability and its political will in order to neuter the Hezbollah. So
unlike other circumstances, one might think from an American perspective, from a distant perspective, that the Lebanese people and even the Lebanese government sees Israel as the occupier. This has been the rhetoric for years. But what's actually happening in recent months and now in recent days, and codified in this initial agreement, is the idea that it's Hezbollah and Iran that's occupying Lebanon, and that Israel, even it doesn't, the language doesn't say it, but is essentially part of the liberation of the Lebanese people and the Lebanese government to restore their sovereignty and their borders. That's a huge
shift.
You used in a previous interview we did jiu-jitsu. It's like putting the Jew in jiu-jitsu. Like Israel is coming to the aid and the liberation of Iran. It's not that Iran wants Israeli forces to be on the ground
Lebanon
for too long. Yeah, of Lebanon. But Lebanon is saying it wants this deal with Israel, and it's saying it openly. This isn't some back channel CIA, Mossad
not at all
deal. This
and
is
in
right
fact, 20 seconds of context. Back in June 1982, Operation Peace for Galilee, the Israeli army penetrates the Lebanese border, and the Lebanese Shiites in the south waving and celebrating this Israeli savior that came in to destroy the PLO that had taken over much of, certainly all of southern Lebanon. And here you have a copy-paste.
Okay, that's important. All right, now we got to back up one more step. The PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization under Yasser Arafat, formed in the 1960s, but it had tried to take over Jordan, the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan. And for a while, King Hussein, back in the late 60s, 1970, thought, okay, I don't want to be unkind to my Palestinian friends. Sure, you can be here. But then Yasser Arafat tried to take over and control Jordan. And finally, King Hussein had had enough of it. And in 1970, I believe,
it was 1970,
September of 1970, went to war, actual physical war not against Israel, but against the PLO, drove them out. Where did they go? They went to Lebanon, they began to take over Lebanon, and
they sure did.
And Lebanon keeps being a country that foreign actors, first the Palestine Liberation Organization, and then Iran with Hezbollah, just keep trying to take over this beautiful, once peaceful, once Switzerland of the Middle East, Paris of the Middle East country. And I think the Lebanese people are getting sick of it, but they don't seem to have the military or political strength yet to cast off Iran and Hezbollah by itself.
Extraordinary as it is, because the Hezbollah has only about 30,000 fighters. The Lebanese security forces and all the other security forces together, 120,000. 4 times the manpower, if you will, of the security manpower of the Hezbollah. But the Hezbollah are strong, they're trained, they're well funded by the IRGC. Even as the Iranian economy is really in the dumps, there's always funding for terror when it goes to the crown jewel of Iran. Now, here's the great part about the Lebanon-Israel deal. It solves President Trump's problem in being able to say, no, we're not violating the MOU between Iran and the United States by Israel fighting Lebanon, because the Lebanese people and the government they've signed an MOU with Israel. So that drives a wedge between the Iranian regime's Hezbollah proxy and the government of Lebanon. So that's very, very important for President Trump.
Is it fair to say then, that's a very interesting point, that this deal between Lebanon and Israel, brokered by the U.S., brokered specifically by Secretary of State Rubio, for those of us who are concerned that the Iran MOU is not a good deal as it's written, this should give us encouragement that Trump hasn't lost his marbles. There are multiple things going on. Your point in another interview was you don't think Iran, in the next 60 days Iran is going to sign a type of deal that Trump would be satisfied by. He may kick the ball up another 30 days or whatever, but I find myself, especially listening to you, more encouraged by what the Trump team is doing because of the Lebanon deal right now than I felt when there was only the Iran MOU on the table.
In fact, you're so right, Joel. In fact, just hours ago, the Iraqi government has just announced that all foreign forces, and we know that the Iranian regime has penetrated Iraq with its own terror warriors there. They have announced that all weapons will be considered illegal and will be collected by the Iraqi security forces. This is the domino effect that the Lebanon-Israel MOU has started. And this is a very important, remember, in the Middle East, perception is everything. And here you have the perception that, Israel is a strong horse in the Middle East. That there's a term in Arabic, al-faras al-asil, the noble rider. And Israel is considered the noble rider and the noble horse in the Middle East. And that's why this particular deal with Lebanon is so very important, even though it may not end up in the near term in the Lebanese security forces actually taking their country back. But it certainly allows Israel to maintain its own security zones, to protect its northern communities, and also to prepare the way to weaken the Hezbollah to a degree in which we very much hope that the Lebanese security forces ultimately, at the tipping point, will be able to take their country back for the Lebanese people.
I've been really surprised to see Lebanese President Joseph Aoun speaking against Iran and speaking against Hezbollah so openly. And I'm not saying he's praising Israel, but speaking openly about a desire for a deal. I'm also seeing, and we're seeing Lebanese commentators, columnists, political analysts over the last year or so, maybe longer, but certainly within the last year, certainly within the last few months, speaking very openly about, I would say, to use a Wall Street term, to be bullish on the prospect of an Israeli-Lebanese agreement and working together with the United States to cast off the Iranian Hezbollah slavery. That's a level of courage that I find encouraging, because I think Lebanese people have felt like slaves under the slave master, not just Hezbollah, that's who's there in front of them, but from Tehran.
They certainly have, and they've been very frightened in order to raise their voices and raise their heads. The most extraordinary aspect of what's happening now, Joel, in Lebanon is there actually are Lebanese Shiite leaders that are openly criticizing Hezbollah and Iran. No, that's a real event.
Last question on this. A third or so of the Lebanese people are Christians of various
Maronite and Orthodox.
Right. Small evangelical presence, but how are Christians in Lebanon reading this situation, and have they begun speaking out? This is so new that I've been so focused on the Iran side. I'm glad to have you on set to talk about it. How are Christians likely to perceive it, and are you starting to hear from some Christian leaders in Lebanon already?
Well, this is a very, very important moment, certainly for our evangelical family, Christian family in the United States, to support and strengthen and bolster and offer courage to Christians in Lebanon. Christians mostly are in the north of Lebanon, and what the Hezbollah has done has to try to take over and operate from those communities to try to draw Israeli fire into those areas, using essentially a Christian community as a bulletproof vest, which we simply can't allow that to happen. But that's how cynical the Islamic Republic is about using people as live bulletproof vests in order to protect themselves.
Are you seeing Christians speak out yet, or is it too soon?
I think it's a bit soon. Christians remember what happened in the 1975 Civil War. They remember the terrible.
They were decimated.
They were decimated,
yeah.
And
and many left.
Many left to the west. But there certainly is a very important, blessed, and robust community that has to be protected in Lebanon. I do see this, as you mentioned earlier in the program, as a pathway to the continuation of the Abraham Accords. Lebanon would be ripe to do that. This is a very brave move on the part of Joseph Aoun, and I must say that Israel's ambassador to the United States, Dr. Yechiel Leiter, has done a wonderful job in leading this and sticking in there to make sure that all of the important details are being hashed out. This is not an easy job, and it's a historic moment. So congratulations to everyone that even made this MOU happen. It's a very important development, and if President Trump had not been in favor of it, it wouldn't have happened, because it has the bona fides, it has the power and the legitimacy of the United States, and that is a key message to the entire Middle East. That is what peace through strength looks like. That's what America First security policy looks like, is America asserting its primacy for the purposes of peace, for the purpose of stability and security and prosperity in all areas of the world, now here in the Middle East.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. Dan Diker. Look, this is a critical moment, and as Christians, well, you may not be a Christian watching, but if you are, be praying for the people of Lebanon. Be praying that this deal takes hold and can be filled out and set into motion. Pray for the protection, the physical protection of Lebanese President Joseph Aoun and his inner circle, because Iran, Hezbollah would love to assassinate this man, because he is right now leading very carefully but very boldly, leading Lebanon into a new era, an era of liberation from their Iran slave masters, from Hezbollah, into a relationship stronger with America. That's the most important, but also stronger with Israel. And I just pray that it actually comes to pass. I am bullish on this. You've heard me say, in part because of Bible prophecy, talking about quiet between Israel and all of its neighbors. It's messy right now. We're not there yet. But I believe what was set into motion on October 7th is leading us in a better place. But there are a lot of bumps along the way. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Keep praying, and be sure to become a subscriber to our YouTube channel. Hit like on this. Give us your comments and give us your feedback. And keep praying for Israel and Lebanon. God bless you.